Hey everyone, it's Alice, and today I'm going to be sharing some feminist YA recommendations for you. So because yesterday was International Women's Day, I thought that it would be the perfect time for me to talk about some of my favourite YA books that have feminist themes and feminist characters and are all just about female empowerment. And I hope that this is something that is interesting to you because some of my favourite books are ones that have feminist themes. I'm not somebody who likes the damsel in distress. I think that it's a really cheap and lazy trope, and I'd much rather see the princess save herself. But yeah, so without further ado, I will get on with this. Hopefully there will be some books in here that you haven't heard us talk about before, because I've done like a deep dive back into my Goodreads history to try and pick the best books for this. So there's a lot of ones that I read pre-booktube and there's a lot of ones that I can't remember talking about before, but there will be 10 recommendations in here today, so hopefully you'll find at least something that will interest you. The first book I'd like to recommend is Asking for It by Louise O'Neill. This is Louise O'Neill's second novel, and I read this one because it was shortlisted for the YA Book Prize. I always read the shortlist every single year. Apart from the first year, which is ironic because Louise O'Neill won the first year with Only Ever Yours, which is apparently a Handmaid's Tale YA retelling that is super duper feminist, and I haven't read that one, so I can't recommend it here today, but I do recommend Asking for It. So in this book, it will be one that you'll want to avoid if you feel triggered by depictions of sexual violence or sexual assault against women, as there is a girl called Emma, and she goes to a party and she is drugged and she is sexually assaulted by a few boys. It's really hard to even talk about this one because even though it's been, it must have been 4 years since I read this one. Yeah, 4 or 5 years since I read this one, and I still feel viscerally upset by the events in this book because it really does hit you hard. Emma's not a nice character. She is one of the popular girls. She's a bit snooty. She looks down her nose at people. She's very self-absorbed. But that doesn't mean that it's okay that this happens to her. And I think that that is the brilliant thing that Louise O'Neill has done with this book. Because too often, YA will focus on the innocent, sweet girl who is the victim. And of course we're all on her side because she's never done anything wrong in her life. But you should still be on the side of the victim, even if they are somebody who is confident and sexually active and they aren't ashamed of their body, or they aren't ashamed to, mess around with people at parties. It doesn't mean that it's okay for these kind of things to happen to them, and I think that's a very important lesson to teach people, especially young people, because slut shaming is rampant in the media, and from what I can remember from secondary school, it was rampant all the time. If people were doing it, they got shamed. If people weren't doing it, they got shamed. And I think actually sitting down and saying to people, there is no excuse for this happening. It doesn't matter whether they decide to be sexually active or not. It is not okay. I think that is a brilliant moral. But in this book, you do have Emma's experience goes viral. People leak pictures of her while she is at her most vulnerable, while she is being abused, and it ends up going to court, and it's like a global court case. All eyes on this little town in Ireland, whether they're going to find the boys guilty or not. And I think this isn't a book that sugarcoats, and it isn't a book with a happy ending. I actually can't remember how it ends, but it's not cut and dry. It's not like as soon as the result comes in, it's all handy dandy fine, it's over now. It really does examine the deep, long-lasting impacts that these kind of events can have on people. And I think that it's just inherently feminist, just the way that she decides to take them to court and the way that she is defending herself despite going through this. I think it's brilliant. The next book I'd like to recommend is The Burning by Laura Bates. This was actually one that I didn't enjoy personally, but I can see that it would be good for young readers who are interested in feminism and who are looking to read more feminist themes. So Laura Bates has actually written a few non-fiction feminist books, and I think that's why this YA book sticks in my mind so much, even though I didn't enjoy it, because she does bring a lot of her research into it, and she looks at schools and bullying, and specifically bullying against females, and also looks back through time at like the lens of witchcraft and how women were ostracized because people thought that they were witches, just because they might have been women who acted out with an ordinary, who might have been more confident, who might have been more popular, that could have automatically become something that counted against them, even if it was just something as simple as a personality difference. I can't really remember much about this one, but the fact that when I was thinking feminist YA, this was one of the first books that popped into my head, shows that it has had a lasting impact, even if I can't remember specific plot points. So I actually think it's going to be one that I'm going to reread sooner rather than later, because I might appreciate it more second time around. The next book I'd like to recommend is The Exact Opposite of Okay by Laura Stephen, and this is another book that still kind of hits me right in the chest. I related so much to this story. So there is a girl called Izzy, and she's just messing around with a guy at a party, and someone takes pictures of her, posts them on the internet. She gets slut-shamed, she gets ostracised, and she has no idea why it's happening. She has no idea who took pictures of her, she has no idea why they are leading this crusade against her, and it's like her and her friend. She is very funny and she's trying to deal with everything through comedy, and so there are some like really laugh out loud moments in this one, and considering it's about quite a difficult subject, the fact that it can still make you crack a smile proves that Laura Stephen has a very, very good talent. But I think I can't really talk too much about why this one impacted me so much, because it does end up getting a bit spoilery, but like, way to say it. Let's just say I had an experience with a guy who basically said that he was a nice guy, so he was going to finish last. And I was like, anybody who says they're a nice guy isn't a nice guy. Yeah, you'll see what I mean if you read this book. Don't trust guys who try and get one over on you like that, because they're just doing it for sympathy. They aren't doing it because they genuinely think they're going to finish last, or they genuinely think they're a nice guy. But yes, I really, really want to read the sequel to this one. I've literally got it behind me and I still haven't read it. But this one, I think I'm going to reread this with Sean before we read that one, because he didn't read this with me the first time around, but I did read this in one sitting and I demolished it. It was wonderful. The next book I'd like to recommend might be a bit of a controversial one, because it's Firsts by Laurie Elizabeth Flynn. And in Firsts, you've got a girl who starts her own kind of little business. She wants girls to have the perfect first time, so she sleeps with their boyfriends before they do, to teach them how to treat their ladies right. I know, a tenuous link with feminism, because it is kind of like backhanded in some ways, like, oh, well, she's stealing their boyfriends and she's not respecting their relationships. So yes, it can be unfeminist as well, but I think just her heart is in the right place, and even if she does these things and doesn't really think about the consequences, like, her heart is in the right place. She genuinely wants to make sure that female sexuality is uplifted and that female pleasure is the priority of these boys. And when there are so many books where it's like really experienced guy with a virgin girl and he is changing her world because they're doing it for the first time and he is so perfect, I think it's just nice to see a girl who has all the experience who is like, right, okay, these girls are going to have their expectations completely dashed because you are not going to be good at this, so I will try to help you in my way. It's just a really interesting concept. I've never read anything like it before. It's a really quick read. It was Laurie Elizabeth Flynn's debut, so it's just it always just stands out in my mind as like a really strong debut novel, and I'm looking forward to reading more of her work in the future, because she's got The Girls Are All So Nice Here coming out very soon. And that one sounds like it's going to be like quite a look at the kind of toxic relationship between female peers. So I think that one might end up being quite feminist as well. My sixth recommendation for you today is Foul is Fair by Hannah Capin. I was kindly invited to take part in the blog tour for this one last February by Wednesday Books, so a huge thanks to Wednesday Books for allowing me the opportunity to read and review this title. This one is quite similar to Asking for It in some ways, because there is a girl who gets sexually assaulted at a party. But instead of taking her attackers to court, she decides that the best way to get revenge is to kill them all. That's what I like to see. I'm not encouraging violence. I'm not saying that it's a good idea to kill people who wrong you, but it's just so badass. She's like, right, okay, I'm going to tell my mum and dad, and they're going to be like, hey, we'll support you. Do you want us to do anything? Can we take them to court? Do you want us to contact the police? And she's like, nah, I'm dealing with this in my way. And her parents are like so proud of her as well. They're like, yeah, you do it. You get those beeps. Pre-censoring myself so that Sean doesn't have to get the dolphin out. But yeah, it's wild and wacky, and it's not very realistic. But I think it's such a close-knit group of female friends, and they're all about uplifting and supporting. And even though this girl has been through this horrible ordeal, she knows that she's still got her friends behind her. And even though she comes up with this idea and is like, hey, how about we kill these guys? She doesn't think, oh yeah, this is an outlandish suggestion, they're not going to agree with it. They're all just straight away like, we will do whatever you need us to do because you deserve our support. And what's more feminist than a female friendship group that are willing to murder for each other? My actual 6th recommendation, because I've realised I can't count and Foul is Fair was actually the 5th recommendation, is The Hate U Give by Angie Thomas. I could have chosen either The Hate U Give or On the Come Up, because Angie Thomas writes very strong female characters who are not afraid of having their own minds. They're not afraid They're not afraid of being loud and outspoken and tackling injustices where they see them, whether that is in the lens of police brutality against black people or whether that is the lens of like sexism in the music industry. And I think that there's just something about these characters that you can't help but root for them. And, well, of course, because they're in ridiculous situations, and these aren't situations that people should be put through because society should be better and we should have grown past these things. But I love Star, and I love this girl in On the Come Up whose name I've forgotten. Oh no, it's been too long since I've read it. Brie. I should have remembered that because her dad is referenced in Concrete Rose, and Sean and I had a whole conversation about it. But I love Star and I love Brie, and I'm looking forward to seeing what Angie Thomas writes next. So if you are looking for a writer who is not only a feminist writer but who writes feminist black characters, then Angie Thomas is definitely my go-to recommendation. The next recommendation I have for you today is The Lie Tree by Frances Hardinge. This one's like, it's advertised as YA and it was up for the YA Book Prize, but it really does give me middle grade vibes. So there is a girl, it's set in the Victorian times, and there's a girl whose dad is a scientist, and she also wants to be a scientist, but she is held down and kept back and told that she's not allowed to be interested in those kinds of things because she is a girl. And that's not the overwhelming point of the story. There is a lot of other things going on in here, but that is kind of like the main thing that I took away from it. The way that this girl is being held down not only by society but by her family and by parental expectations, and she still has this deep innate interest in science that makes her defy them so that she can carry on doing the things that she loves. And yeah, this is one that again I would really like to reread because I read this one, I think it was the year before asking for it that The Lie Tree was shortlisted. But yeah, it's been many a moon since I've read it, but it's definitely one that I enjoyed, and it was an easy 5-star for me. And I think that year I actually picked The Lie Tree as the book that I wanted to win the book prize because it was just superb. The next book I'd like to recommend for you is actually part of a duology, so I recommend both of them, and those are No Virgin and No Shame by Anne Cassidy. So again, similar to Asking for It, similar to Foul is Fair, a girl is sexually assaulted and she has to decide whether she wants to go through the trials and tribulations of a court case or whether she's just going to let it slide because she blames herself. These books are very short. I think they're less than 200 pages each, so I would say that the whole duology together is just over 300 pages. But it really just gets to the point, and it's straightforward and direct, and it just tells you, without trying to sugarcoat anything, without trying to soften the blow, like how unlikely it is for people to get convictions against sexual assault trials, and how difficult it is for victims to not only come to terms with what they've been through, but with what society can then put them through because of the situation surrounding it. Again, try not to give too many spoilers for this one, but this is definitely a duology that I would recommend because not only do the two books really complement each other, but they are so necessary together. In fact, I kind of want them to just republish this as one book because it it's very unsatisfying if you read the first half without reading the second half, and the second half wouldn't make any sense like the first half, so I'm not quite sure why it's a duology, why there's that disconnect, but it definitely does pack a punch. The penultimate book I would like to recommend for you today is actually the one that inspired me to make this list, and that is Rules for Being a Girl by Candice Bushnell and Katie Cotugno. So I read this in February, and it's just been really sticking in my mind. Like, Marin's story is so powerful. So she is kissed by her teacher and she doesn't know what to do about it, but when she comes forward, people kind of treat her like a laughing stock. They're saying that she was asking for it, they're saying that she must have misread the signs, and just the way that she is completely gaslit. Like, her experience is just completely overwritten and everybody else's assumptions are put on top of her, and she doesn't feel as though she's able to fight. It really sticks in my mind, and this is one that I didn't think it was gonna stick with me as much as it has, because as I said in my February wrap up, I will link that down in the description because I talk about this a bit more in detail. The ending does disappoint me a little bit, but they make a whole feminist book club and they're recommending so many feminist texts in here, and they're trying to she's trying to overcome this awful thing that's happened to her and use it to better herself and to change who she is as a person into someone that she is more proud of being. And I think if we can all do that when we experience adversity, that would be a wonderful thing. And the last book that I would recommend for you today is Slay by Brittany Morris. This one is mostly feminist because it's a girl who's designed her own video game, and I mean, video games and girls, we had the whole Gamergate thing. Like, people still kind of look down on girls who try to get involved in video games because it still very much feels like it's a boys' club. So for Brittany Morris to write this strong character who has made her own game is brilliant. But not only that, she's made this game to be a safe space for black people. So it is a game, it's like a combination. It's got like a virtual reality aspect, but then you collect cards in the game that then let you do like Battle Coliseum things. So it's kind of a combination of all the game styles, so it will appeal to a wide range of readers who are also interested in video games. But in the main character's opinion, gaming places aren't often safe spaces for black people to enjoy because there's a lot of inappropriate language, there's a lot of racist language, there's a lot of personal attacks, and she doesn't want young people who just want to play a game and just have fun to be subjected to that much aggravation because of the colour of their skin. And I think that's just really inspiring, and I loved this story and I really, really would recommend it. Brittany Morris's next book is coming out in a couple of weeks. It's called The Cost of Knowing, and I'm looking forward to that one as well because she really does have a talent for writing, and just the twists that she puts on things. Like, I just really like making a video game but then like combining all the little things together. It's just a lot of fun, and yeah, definitely I think she's going to end up becoming one of my favourite authors if she carries on writing books that are this strong. And those are my 10 feminist recommendations for you. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If there are any feminist YA books that you would recommend that I've missed out on, then please leave them down in the comments, because there were some people I was thinking of mentioning in here, but I tried to keep the list a bit more concise. So if you would be interested in a part 2 of this video in the future, please let me know, because I'm sure I can get together another 10 for you. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video, please like it, and if you would like to subscribe, we would be super duper grateful. We post new videos every Tuesday, Thursday and Saturday, so we will see you again soon. Bye! Hey everyone! I'm dying. Oh, good start. Try again. Hey everyone!